Do you want to be in full control of the coffee you extract, all the flavors, the expression, the aftertaste? Well, then you're lucky because we have some very exciting developments going on in the coffee market, and more precisely in that part that specializes in third-party burrs. And for that reason, I want to talk a bit about this one here, a new filter burr from a new brand called Le Brew, as well as this one, which is the POB or the POP, the pour over burr from the hand grinder brand Kino. Now, 3 years ago, James Hoffmann, the patron saint of coffee, made a video titled "Should you upgrade your burrs?" And in that video, the answer actually wasn't clear. Yes, there were some upsides to burr swapping, such as better flavors, but he also had some worries. Now, since James has taken on the important task of analyzing celebrity coffee and debunking Huberman's morning routine, I think we have to deal with this question ourselves. And for me, the answer is a resounding yes, you should upgrade your burrs. But more than just upgrading burrs, I think we could be at a point where burrs is not something you just upgrade, but something you choose on a specific occasion to refine a certain cup. A little bit like a photographer has many different lenses for their camera. One is for landscape photography, another one is for portraits. I think we could see something like that coming to coffee. And to me, as a geek, that's just super exciting. So the first burr set I have is the Le Brew 64mm filter burr set produced by a Chinese startup company. And the other is a cone burr produced by the hand grinder brand Kino that is aimed at pour over coffee. I'll get back to what these burrs offer and why they're so interesting to me, but first a little bit of context. Most people, when they get into coffee, just assume that one grinder is better than the other. But what often makes the really big difference is the burrs. Most of the coffee flavors are determined by the burrs inside the grinder. And for that reason, it's gotten a lot more focus in the last couple of years. For instance, what is the difference between the EasyPresso ZP6 and the EasyPresso K Pro? Well, it's just the burrs. People talk a lot more about the ZP6 than the K Pro, so that just shows the difference this stuff makes. Previously, it was not that common to swap and upgrade burrs, but nowadays it's becoming more of a standard trick in the Coffee Geeks playbook. And there are a lot of good reasons for that. You could say it's almost like getting a completely new grinder for a way lower price. Of course, traditional coffee grinder brands have been manufacturing burrs for ages, 100 years or more, but they never really focused on offering the burrs as an accessory or an upgrade. It was always just, hey, buy our grinder and it will taste great. But there was never any focus on supplying burrs for other brands. One famous example of this is the Ditting Lab Sweet burr. It was never offered in any other size besides 80mm. So if you wanted to get this kind of flavor profile and this burr design, then you pretty much just had to buy a very expensive Ditting Lab Sweet grinder. That was really the only way to get access to this kind of tasty cast burr profile. But then SSP came in and decided, hey, wait a minute, this burr design is so good, so we'll just produce it in a lot of different sizes. And now you really have it available in multiple sizes for multiple grinders with different kinds of coating. So you can say a lot about the Korean brand SSP, but for a while this was the only brand that was doing this. But now luckily what's going to happen is that I think we're going to see a lot more brands entering the scene. And I got one of them here, I got it a few months ago, and it's called the Le Brew Hyper Burrs in the filter version. And it's a Chinese brand, and they have a few models out already for both filter and espresso. But they are expanding their lineup quite aggressively, and they will also be releasing a Lab Sweet style burr, I think both in 64mm, 83mm and 98mm versions as well. So I've been testing this one in the 64mm version, and the cool thing about this grinder here is that you can just pop out the burr very easily, and as you can see, it looks very much like a burr we've been talking on the channel recently. And that is the SSP MP/Brew burr set. And as you might have seen in my video about these two burrs, even though they look very similar, they do have some taste differences. And one is very capable at grinding for espresso, while the other one is not as good for this. Well, it's a little bit the same with the Le Brew burr. Even though it looks like those other burrs, it tastes quite different. And also, it doesn't really grind very well for espresso. In some grinders, such as this one here, you are able to grind quite fine, but getting up to 9 bars is a little bit of a hassle, and it just takes forever and has a lot of retention if you're trying to grind for espresso. So it really is a filter burr set most of all. We'll come back and talk about the flavor profile of these burrs more in depth, but first I just want to talk about another brand that has made this video possible, and that's Incogni, who's the sponsor of the video. Incogni's goal is to help you take back control of your online privacy. And you might think you're being careful with your data, but the reality might surprise you. As someone who's a semi-public figure, I've realized how much privacy means. My inbox has been a complete mess for quite some time because I get so many weird emails from people who either want me to test some strange product that has absolutely nothing to do with coffee, or perhaps sell me some kind of gimmicky online marketing service. But how did all these people suddenly have my information? That's when I learned about data brokers. These are companies that collect, aggregate, and sell your personal information. We're talking about your name, address, shopping habits, and even sensitive details like your financial history. And the most scary part is most of us never gave them the permission to do all this. Fortunately, there's now a solution that can really save a lot of time and energy, which is Incogni. It's a service that automates the process of removing your data from these brokers' databases. Here's how it works. You sign up, provide some basic info, and Incogni just starts sending out data removal requests to hundreds of data brokers on your behalf. They'll handle all the back and forth, so you don't have to lift a finger. What I like about Incogni is that it keeps working for you. Data brokers often recollect your info, but Incogni continuously monitors and sends new removal requests as needed. It's like having a personal privacy guardian. You might think that personal data breaches are not that bad and stuff like that doesn't happen to you, but the reality is that this can really become a massive headache, and I'm not just talking about spam here. I don't want to share too much about this case here, but I basically had some scammer impersonating me and doing shady stuff in my name because there had been some data breaches. So I highly recommend that you take control of your digital privacy and give Incogni a try. Use my code Chronicler at the link below and get 60% off an annual plan. And now let's get back to the coffee. So I have the super delicious Ethiopian coffee from a roaster in Lund, southern Sweden. So let's just dump it in here. And as you might be able to tell, the pitch with these burrs is pretty nice. Less screechy than the MP burrs. So this is just a very tasty coffee, classic Ethiopian profile, washed. It's got that bergamot, peach, lemon thing going on. Very enjoyable. And I have to say, these burrs are just very forgiving. The SSP burrs tend to have a bit more of a glass-like, clear, transparent quality that can be a bit unforgiving sometimes, also very enjoyable with other cups. Whereas I would say these burrs here are a bit more, they are somewhere between the SSP brew burrs and the SSP cast burrs. So they are pretty easy to recommend. They are safe burrs. And I think most coffees that will give you a pretty good profile. It's not that I lack clarity with these at all, actually, or aftertaste or anything like that, but just something quite different, but still enjoyable. In testing, I've actually been comparing the burr set to both the SSP brew set and the Time More 078, which is also really famous for filter coffee. And what surprised me is that it actually went out and beat these two grinders a couple of times. And it happened both with washed coffees and with natural coffees. And the 078 is really, really good at natural coffees. So it tells you a little bit about the capabilities of this burr set. Another good thing about this one here is that it's also going to be quite a bit cheaper than the SSP burrs. As far as I know, the current retail price is around $140. So while it's still not super cheap, for the kind of upgrade you're getting, and if you compare to other aftermarket burrs, I would say it's a pretty good deal. Another interesting burr is this one here. That's the Kino Puro burr, sometimes just called the POP or the POB. And over the last half year to 1 year, it's really become an underground cult sensation among hardcore coffee geeks. So it's a very interesting burr set. I've been using it with the Easypresso JE, which is a very old Easypresso model that is great for espresso. But the cool thing is that since this is not a whole burr set, it's just an inner burr that works with the outer burr that's already in this grinder. It's super easy to install it. Let me just show you how quick this goes. So there you have it. As you can see, it probably takes less than a minute to go from a really good espresso kind of grinder to a really good filter grinder. And I will say it's quite different from a lot of the grinders we've been talking about over the last couple of years. So there's this style of burr that is used in the Easypresso K Ultra, the Comandante, many other grinders. That one is very acidic. Then we got the ZP6 grinder profile, which is more analytical. This one here, I would say in a sense, it actually reminds me of the filter burrs from the brew, because it's just It's an interesting cup that's not super acidic, but it still gives you a lot of flavor notes to zoom in on. And it gives you a cup that's kind of evolving over time. So you have both a textural and a temporal element. And I think that's something that a lot of people are becoming more interested in. So overall, just a very easy, affordable hack. I think the pour-over burr will probably cost around $50 most places in the world. And it doesn't really take any technical skills to install. Of course, it depends a little bit on the grinder. Here it's very easy. I also used it with the JX, and that one, that little disc that sits outside the adjustment ring doesn't fit perfectly. So you will probably have to do some modifications, but you can easily take the disc from the JE and then use it to install it in the JX. So it's mainly a matter of having something that fits into these 3 holes on the backside of the burr. One could of course argue that all this burr talk is a bit of a consumerist point of view, that one should just focus on the gear you have and learn to make good coffee with that. And while I do agree with that to a certain degree, it's still a lot more reasonable to buy a small piece of metal for $50 than going out and getting a big, new, expensive grinder with a lot of plastic potentially. So if I had to envision my dream grinder for 2024, it would be one where you can change burrs in absolutely no time. We're already seeing examples of this now. For instance, the Niche Duo comes with 2 different sets of burr carriers, which reduces the time. It takes quite a bit. There's also the new Varia V6 grinder, which has both a flat and conical burr set. And of course, there's also the Orca grinder that also comes with a flat burr set and a set of ghost burrs. It's not a perfect grinder by any means, but it's a pretty cool development. I've already demonstrated in this video how fast it is to change from the Italmill burr in the EasyPresso JE. And actually this burr will fit in many different grinders with a bit of work. It also fits in the EasyPresso JX, but the outer burr design on that grinder is a bit different. And as a result, the flavor is also a bit different. And I find not quite as enjoyable as the EasyPresso JE. Of course, we've also seen other cool grinders like this recently. For instance, the Mixcool Arius, where you can just unload the inner cone burr in just 2 seconds. Like so. So why not offer a separate cone burr with a dedicated geometry for ultra clean pour over? This burr set here is a pretty good all-rounder. It can both do espresso and filter coffee well, but why not ship it with 2 burrs that focus on 2 very different arenas? So that's something that would be really interesting to see. And then we of course also have this one here, the WPM ZP1, where you just twist the top burr carrier like so, and then you have your access to your burrs. So of course it's also not that much work to change burrs in something like the DF64 or other grinders like the Fellow Oat, but still it's annoying enough that you don't want to do it on a daily or even weekly basis. So as far as I can tell, modular grinders and quick release burr sets, that's what us coffee geeks want in 2024, or at least this one here. But I'm also curious about your experiences with burr swapping. Has it been frustrating or an improvement? Let me know in the comments down below. That's all I have for you today. I'll see you in another coffee video very soon.